All right, let's see what we got for today. First, let me say that the resonance of the voice of the Spirit is the frequency of heaven. I heard that just now in the shower, so tune in and don't tune out. It's been a crazy day. There was some spiritual battle taking place. First off, also, I want to say thank you to everybody who's been watching, everybody who's been commenting. I really hope that everything I've been saying has been a blessing to your spirit. You know, my mom used to tell me, because I used to always talk about heaven and always talk about the second coming of the Lord and always talk about, you know, being spiritually in tune as opposed to just being religious. And she would always tell me, don't be so heavenly minded that you're of no earthly good. Never made sense to me, but I hope I'm being of some earthly good to you guys. That being said, I also want to tell you guys that I don't want you guys to just hear what I'm saying and entertain yourselves with it. I want you to know, guys, that I received these downloads and these visions and these dreams. Most of them have been visions, which I'm going to get into also. It's not because I'm special in any kind of way, shape, or form. It's because one day I had the understanding, I think I heard it in a sermon, or maybe like Sid Roth, it's Supernatural or something like 10 years ago, that we are seated in heavenly places. And one day it finally snapped. It may have been Joseph Prince, I don't know. But I also pray in the Spirit. I think praying in the Spirit, I take that back. I know that praying in the Spirit is the most spiritual thing we can do. It's the closest to any kind of heavenly activity that we can do on earth besides sharing the gospel. Let's just put it like this. When you're praying in the Spirit, you are truly opening up the curtain. You are opening up the veil. You are stepping onto the other side. You are letting heaven come into you and come out of your mouth from your heart. And it may seem insignificant, but like I said, that's the power of God. That's the confounding power of God. And it was through understanding that I'm seated in heavenly places and praying in tongues that I began to realize it's actually my heavenly self. It's my spirit that is praying. When I'm praying in tongues, I am in tune with the Spirit. You not just me, but anybody who's praying in the Spirit. You are in tune with the Spirit when you are praying in tongues, and you can access heaven through praying in tongues. It does everything that you needed to do at one time. It fights the enemy, it worships the Lord, it lays out your requests, it intercedes for people, strengthens your body, and it says, yes, Lord, yes, to the downloads and revelations and gifts that He has for you. Now, when you begin to realize that you are seated in heavenly places, you will be able to, in a sense, close your eyes here and open your eyes there. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. You know what I'm saying? And now that's getting into multi-dimensional existence, which will come out as the Spirit gives me utterance. I wish I could just jump straight into it. I even tried to make a video where I actually did make a video. Maybe God will still have me post it. I haven't deleted it. But that's when we start getting into multi-dimensional existence and time travel and stuff like that. And that ain't no milk. You know what I mean? That's meat. But let me tell you guys 2 dreams really quick, because I remembered what it was that I forgot the other day when I was talking about racetracks in heaven. When I was maybe about 6, 7, 8 years old, I had a dream that I was in an amusement park with my grandma, and she was like a chaperone, and there were some other chaperones, and there was a whole bunch of kids, and it's like we were on a field trip. And we see this blue roller coaster and a big line, so we all get in line. It had a really awesome looking sign. We all get in line. As we go through the line is like a little museum, and we're going through the museum, and it's teaching us stuff, and it has cool like little displays and information and stuff like that to keep you entertained while you're in line. And as we're in line, every several minutes or so, all you hear is ah! like loud screaming at the top of people's lungs. So basically, we end up getting in, and I had this dream so long ago. I don't even know how it popped into my mind not long ago, and I was like, this was a heaven dream from when I was young, because I remember I woke up and I knew that I had just came back from heaven, and I was a little kid. And so we get on the roller coaster, and this roller coaster is insane. I'm talking G-forces. I once rode a roller coaster named the X2 in Six Flags Magic Mountain several years ago. That was the most intense roller coaster I've ever been on. This roller coaster was like that, but before I even knew that a roller coaster could be like that. So we're going around, we're loop-de-looping. It was one of the kinds where your feet hang freely, and even the whole seat contraption was actually different now that I think about it. It wasn't like your typical train car. But anyways, we go, y'all, and then we go upside down. Kid you not, the track ends and we start free falling, and everybody goes, "Ah!" We all started screaming at the top of our lungs, and I felt my stomach drop like never before. You know, when I was a little kid, I couldn't scream on a roller coaster because I would go. That was like, they would always make fun of me because I was a little kid and I used to always want to get on big rides. And you know, at the biggest part of the ride, they'd always look over at me to see what I was doing, and I would always be like, I would always like clench my teeth and tighten my stomach, like the G-force was too strong. I couldn't yell. But I remember doing that. I remember being like, like, shoo, man, we dropped, y'all, when everybody started screaming with their hands in the air, and my grandma was laughing next to me. And I've never seen my grandma on a roller coaster to this day, but she was with me. And we free fell, we land back into the track, boom, we go into this tunnel, you know, there's like some blue lights, and the next thing you know, we're back into, you know, the lobby or whatever. Fast forward to a few years ago, I once had this dream where I went into this amazing amusement park, and it was rides as far as the eye could see, and there was these gondolas that were going like on huge wires across the park, and it was, you could take a gondola as a shortcut to there. It was in different zones. You could take a gondola to a zone, or you could literally start on ride one, and ride one would end either at a gondola or where ride two began. And I could, when I got off ride one, because it was they increased in intensity. So ride one was literally just like a little like car, and then you go down like a little corkscrew. And it was almost like a vacation type ride. And I literally got off the ride, and they were like, don't get off the ride, don't get off the ride. And I was like, no, I get it, I understand. So I hopped off the ride while it was still moving, and I went for the gondola instead of waiting for wide two. And they had everything there, from like little kiddie rides, like the spinning teacups. And then when I got on the gondola and I saw off into the distance, I saw, you know, loops and drops that were pretty much like, as far away as they were probably hundreds and hundreds of feet tall. So yeah, there is huge amusement parks in heaven, huge roller coasters. And the crazy thing about heaven is that the experientiality of it is maxed out. It doesn't matter that you can fly. It doesn't matter that you can drive at, you know, warp speed. It doesn't matter that you can you know, cliff jump without a parachute. Everything you do feels like that's the funnest thing you can do. So when you get on a roller coaster, it's still amazing. It's far more amazing than any roller coaster on earth. And you could ride them. You can be in the amusement park for days, and every ride is still going to be just as thrilling. Speaking of tuning in and not tuning out, and amusement parks, you know how like a lot of amusement parks actually have cartoon characters running around in them, like, you know, Six Flags has like WB characters, and of course Disney World has like Disney characters and whatnot. Like I've mentioned in another heaven video, there are real life cartoon characters in heaven, and I have seen scenes that are like almost like a Comic-Con type scene, and it's the real actual cartoon characters, and they're extremely funny. I mean, cartoons have really brought people a lot of joy here in the world, and that's because they come from heaven. And to be honest, y'all, pretty much everything comes from heaven. The devil just tries to twist what God has already made, and he tries to use them to distract us from God. But everything that's enjoyable, everything that's good on earth is actually something that's from heaven. All the things that bring like pain and hurt and loneliness and stuff like that, those are not from heaven. Those are missing heaven. Those are destined for hell. I don't think this video is going to have a whole lot more secrets as far as heaven goes, but I do feel what the Spirit is leading me to, the message that I'm trying to get across to you guys. And that is that we receive by faith. You know, a page that I followed today, a group of old guys, I think it's called End Times Talk. Their video today was logical explanations for life in heaven. Okay, so I get what they're trying to say, but when it comes to heaven, you can just throw logic right out the window, I'll tell you that much. Heaven logic is a different kind of logic. It is the spirit of truth and life and all righteousness. And maybe I shouldn't have said anything, but you know, when it comes to people talking about heaven, and I hear that they don't really know what they're talking about, and they're just kind of taking shots at the dark, what heaven might be like, I'm just a teeny bit offended, just a little bit. And it's not because I esteem myself any higher, it's just that we are seated in heavenly places. Ask and you shall receive. Knock and the door shall be open to you. If you want to know about heaven, ask God about it. You know, there's no point in sitting here wondering what it's going to be like. There, of course, there's going to be things that we don't know, and that's a part of the thrill. But there are some things that we can know. In fact, I won't even go as far to say that there's things that we can't know. I think we could probably know a lot more about heaven than we may be even able to understand about life on earth. Which leads me to my second, what the Spirit is saying next is that wisdom is value. Wisdom is the most valuable thing that we can attain. More precious than precious stones, rubies and gold, silver, any of that. And it says so in Proverbs. I know my Bible, y'all. And the thing is, I might not be one of those people that can remember every verse, and remember every scripture, and remember every word for word. But the thing is, I have received the truth by faith. When I see something and my spirit says that's true, I believe it and I know it to be true. I don't have to remember every single word to remind myself how true it is. I'm able to break it down into the basics and believe it from that point on, and that's called childlike faith. And like I had mentioned in my last video, our youth in heaven is represented by faith, and our age or maturity in heaven is represented by wisdom. Now, I've seen visions of myself as a small child, you know, I mean a small child like 5 or 6. Sometimes I go to heaven and the voice, when I say go to heaven, I mean in a vision or in my spirit, and my inner dialogue is like that of a small child. One time I saw a quick vision of me sitting on a stone throne, or it was a rock or something, but it was a rock, a throne made of rock, surrounded by tall green grass, and I was sitting on there, and I appeared to be maybe between the ages of 8 and 11. I couldn't really tell, but I was sitting. Let's see if I can show you guys how I was sitting. I was sitting like this, and I had shiny gold rings on every finger, and in those golden rings was all kinds of embedded red and blue gems. I had gold necklaces around my neck. I had gold bracelets and cuffs around my arms. I had gold cuffs and like on my ankles. I had earrings. I had a crown on my head, and I had gold and colored gemstones in my teeth and in my mouth. Another vision I had one time, I appeared to be much older. And I don't mean old and wrinkly and gray, but older than I am now, which is kind of hard to describe in heaven because it wasn't necessarily wrinkly. It's just this seniority type of aura. And my hair was growing crazy in all directions. Like, it was growing straight, and it was like going off here and going off like in a weird direction and going off in all directions. And I had a robe on, and with no jewelry on, a gray robe, a grayish bluish robe, and I believe I was also on a throne made of rock or some kind of stone, maybe like gray marble or something. And there were several other men with me who also had crazy hair. They think some of them had long hair, but I remember one guy actually had the hair of like an old guy, where it's kind of like bald on top, but like, hair around right here. But he wasn't old or wrinkly. Like I said, he looked like a medium-aged man, and the hair was just a symbol of his wisdom, as well as mine, as well as all of ours. And we were sitting and we were judging, and a lady, I believe, came to us with an issue, and she sought out our wisdom and our help. And we consorted with one another. We all said different things to her. One man said his thing to her, and I said my thing to her, and she went about her way, and she was blessed. I once had a vision where I just saw my face smiling, and these teeth back here, this molar back here was I believe the one on the bottom too, but I just specifically remember this top one back here. It was a half red, half blue gemstone. And when I began to open my mouth to speak, to say something, light began to shine out of my mouth. And that's when I realized that there is jewelry in heaven, and every type of jewelry that we have is a gift from God, and it all represents something. And I realized that having those gems in my mouth was representative of speaking wisdom, and in general just speaking treasure, saying good things to people, saying things of value. And then I realized how Satan twisted that on his earth by these rappers and whatnot, all sporting these grills and diamonds and gold in their mouth, and they're speaking nothing but blasphemies. And they essentially, make themselves to be kings and make themselves to be idols, but these are the children of the devil. These jewelries are gifts from God, and they are imbued with the power of God, and they all have a purpose and a reason and a time to be worn, as well as the crowns, because we all know we get crowns. Even in the millennial kingdom and even in heaven, it will be by faith that we receive, and the wisdom that we exercise and grow in will still be of value. And there will be this cycle of growing yet remaining young. So it would be like this cycle of faith and receiving, and wisdom in exercising, making use of what you have, essentially. Oh yeah, so like I was saying, I seen these guys post this video today, and the first thing they start off saying is, I can't wait to get to heaven. They're basically saying, like, money's a curse. Things not being free is a curse. When we get to heaven, everything's going to be free, because in the Garden of Eden, everything was free. And it's not exactly like that. In heaven, in the Garden of Eden, everything was free because it was just fruit on trees. And yes, you could freely take of the fruit. And just like in heaven, you can freely take of the tree of life, our Lord Jesus. You can freely take of the fruits of things in heaven. There's not any stealing in heaven. But I responded with, there is an economy in heaven. And someone else had said, I'm so glad there's no currency in heaven. And I typed in, there is a currency in heaven. And then someone hopped in the comments and replied to me, prove it. To which my response was, I don't have to. But what I was originally going to type to him was, have faith. But I already knew that if his first response to that was prove it, that I was just going to be, typing empty responses. But I made up my mind right then and there. Well, that's how I knew that God was going to have me prove it to you guys. I like you guys. You guys wouldn't be watching these videos if you didn't have that childlike faith. Now, like I was saying, I don't know my scriptures to the point as some people do. And some people know a lot of these scriptures, but they don't have that childlike faith to be able to receive from heaven like that. But as I told y'all before, the currency in heaven is God's glory. Now, does the Bible say that there is riches in his glory? Yes, it does. Does the Bible say that there are treasures in heaven? Yes, it does. Do riches and treasure go hand in hand? Yes, they do. Does the Bible say that we receive by faith? Yes, it does. And like I mentioned earlier, it does tell us that wisdom is far more valuable than rubies or gold. So it is wise for you to be like a little child in your faith. Now, does the Bible say some will be called great in heaven and some will be called the least in heaven? Yes, it does. So this goes to show you that there is a social class in heaven. One who is the least can't just walk up to their mansion and say, it's not big enough, God, make it bigger. Actually, you know what? Make it even bigger. Nah, actually, that guy over there who's great in heaven, make mine bigger than his. Everything is not just free in heaven. And as I'm saying this to y'all, I'm getting excited because I know what the Holy Spirit is doing for you guys right now. Can you feel it? He's making you rich. He's making you richer in heaven. Because I believe that you are receiving this in faith. You know, when I first began to think of heaven, I told God that, well, let me tell you guys this. I was the type of person in church that sat down while everybody stood up to worship and didn't sing. And even when my mom would force me to stand up or whatever, I would just kind of sing under my breath, you know. Some songs would be a little more energetic, I'd clap or whatever, but I didn't raise my voice. But I secretly, especially as I got older, began to harbor this attitude of, I love God more than any of y'all. And the more I began to realize that I was having experiences with God that other people were not relating to, it made it hard for me to worship with the congregation. It just didn't feel real. And really, I don't go to church anymore, guys, but I'm the type of person that if I hear worship music, I'm gonna cry. When nobody's looking and I listen to my worship music, I'm crying, I'm clapping, I'm singing to God. And I don't need anybody to see me do it. Because my intimacy with the Lord is a secret to me. It's sacred. Okay, it seems like the Lord is having me make this a 2-part video. Not sure why, but this one ends here, and there'll be a part 2 to this video.